Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Phelan's Earth Science videos. In this video, we will be talking about how to use your ESRT page 2 and 3, which have the maps of New York State. So before you get started, before you continue watching this video, please make sure that you have your Earth Science reference table out in front of you so that you can follow along in the video by looking at your own reference table. So to start, first let's look at page 2 of the reference table. As you can see at the top, page 2 is a map of New York State, and it's titled Generalized Landscape Regions of New York State. So by now we've learned that there are 3 major types of landscapes: mountains, plateaus, and plains. This map breaks down New York State into its different landscape regions. New York is pretty unique because it contains all 3 types of landscapes throughout various parts of New York. Let's go ahead and first look at the highlands of New York State. Now remember, mountains and highlands are the same thing. Highlands is another word for mountains. So in terms of mountains in New York, we can see that we have the Adirondack Mountains here. And what this map shows us is that anywhere in this bubble where the line takes us, this is all the Adirondack Mountains. So if we were to color this in, this whole area is the Adirondack Mountains. Okay. Over to the side here is the Taconic Mountains. And as you can see, the line also gives us the border for where the Taconic Mountains are. Okay, oops, I actually highlighted 2 mountain regions there. Another mountain area in New York is what's called the Hudson Highlands. Okay, that's this little area I highlighted down here. The Taconic Mountains stretch along the eastern side of the state. Okay. You might also notice that there are some landscape areas that are written in smaller plain text, and then there are some titles that are a little bit bigger and bolder, like here where it says New England Province Highlands. Okay, so that's a bigger geographic area that is identified, right? Like we say in class, we might say we live in the US, and then we could say we live in New York, and then we can say we live in White Plains, right? So every time we are getting a little bit more specific. So in terms of the mountains, a more general name for the mountain area is the New England Province. And then within the New England Province, you might say there is the Taconic Mountains or the Hudson Highlands. Oops. Okay. Now, there is a more general name for the area of the Adirondack Mountains. If we follow the Adirondack out here, we can see there is a bigger title for the major province boundary. The Adirondacks are part of the Grenville province. Okay, up at the top there. So those are our mountains. Now let's go ahead and look at our second landscape type in New York, our plateaus. Okay, so another name for plateau is an upland. Okay, so we have the Appalachian Plateau, which is our major geographic province in terms of our plateau. And part of the Appalachian Plateau in New York, we have the Allegheny Plateau, the Tug Hill Plateau. Okay, now remember, anything beneath this line, anything within this boundary is the plateau. This is all the Allegheny Plateau. Okay, anything in this little bubble here is the Tug Hill Plateau. Now, the Catskills, this is one of the more confusing area for students because students are used to hearing people refer to the Catskill as a mountain area. Okay, the Catskills are actually part of a plateau. They look like mountains because over time, rivers have eroded away at the landscape so that the plateau is now a series of rolling hills, but by definition, the Catskills are not truly a mountain range. Let's see, I believe we have all the plateau areas of New York State highlighted. Okay, so again, Tug Hill Plateau, Allegheny Plateau, the Catskills are all plateaus in New York and are all part of what we call the Appalachian Plateau. Our last landscape region or landscape type are our plains or lowlands. Okay, so in New York we have quite a lot of plains and lowlands in different areas. Down in the bottom we have the Newark lowlands. We have the larger geographic region of the Atlantic coastal plain. In upstate New York, we have the Champlain lowlands, which follow along Lake Champlain. That all connects to the Hudson Mohawk lowlands. In this area here, this kind of extends out a little bit to the middle of the state. Again, back to upstate New York, we have the St. Lawrence lowlands. And the St. Lawrence lowlands, we can tell, are a smaller unit of the interior lowlands, right? That bigger, bolder text is the more general name for the area. And the smaller text, like St. Lawrence lowlands, is the more specific, more local name. We also have the Erie, Ontario lowlands over in western New York. Okay, so one thing that is a point of confusion I noticed last week is some students were saying that Lake Ontario was itself a landscape. Lake Ontario is part of the Erie, Ontario lowlands. It's part, okay, of the interior lowlands landscape region, but we wouldn't say that Lake Erie or Lake Ontario is a landscape. Those are water features on our map. So this is a general view of this map of New York State. It tells us the 3 different landscape regions and where they exist in New York State. Now, if we were to go down and look at page 3, typically you can hold your ESRT open so you can see both pages at once. We have another map of New York State. This map has a lot of information on it. There's a lot more going on in this map here. One thing that's important on this map is it tells us the locations of various cities in New York. It tells us the locations of some mountains. It identifies different rivers in the state and different lakes that exist. So if we were to just take a few minutes, we have looked at this map before, but let's do a little review. We can look at this map. There are different rivers named on the map. For example, here we have the Genesee River. Down near Binghamton here we have the Susquehanna. The Hudson River is on this map. It's hard to find, right? But it flows down all the way down the state. The tricky part of reading this map is that the text is very, very small, and there is a lot of different features on this map, right? There are many features, and so it's sometimes hard to see what you're trying to find. Over here, we have Lake Ontario labeled on our map, a big lake. We have Lake Erie labeled. Okay, we have the Atlantic Ocean out here by Long Island. The Long Island Sound is a piece of water. There are other rivers here. We have the Mohawk River here. In the center of the state here in western New York, or central New York, we have the Finger Lakes region. Those lakes are identified on the map. Okay, so if you keep looking, you'll be able to find additional rivers or lakes on this map, but I just wanted you to try to find a few of them. So in addition to showing us the different water features on the map, or in the state, this map also tells us the locations of some various or selected cities. Okay, we've looked at these cities in the past. For example, here is Ithaca. Remember, the cities are identified by the little dot and then the name of the city or town next to the dot. So another city labeled on the map is Syracuse. Albany is a city labeled on the map. Okay, so typically the Regents questions will ask about various cities and towns labeled on this map. If one of the answers is a town that you can't find on this map, then it's probably not the correct answer. Okay, but you have to remember to look very, very closely because there are a lot of cities labeled here, and like I said, the text is very small and it's sometimes hard to see. Some of the names are hidden, right? One of the most common examples of a town that students can't find is Riverhead. If you look down here on Long Island, Riverhead is hidden in that pattern that exists on Long Island, and it's hard to find. So the reason we're taking the time to look at these cities again is because sometimes they will give you a Regents question and ask you to use both maps together. So you'll have to look at both pages 2 and 3 at the same time to try to answer one question. Let's take a look at an example. Okay, so practice question number 1 here. It says, in which landscape region is Ithaca, New York located? So for this question, we have to first find the town of Ithaca on page 3, figure out approximately where it is in New York State, and then we have to look at page 2 and try to figure out which landscape region it's in. So let's go ahead and try to do this together. First, let's look at page 3. Again, the first thing we have to do is find Ithaca. You're looking for the name of a town. You're looking for Ithaca. Ithaca is right here in the center of the state. Find Ithaca, put your finger on it. Okay, so now we know Ithaca is in central New York, okay? You can try to figure out where it is based on the shape of New York. It's just a little bit above that very flat area of New York. Okay, now we want to remember where Ithaca is and then go up and look at page 2 and try to figure out what landscape region it's in. So if I go up to page 2 now, again, I have to try to match the two maps, right? Ithaca isn't labeled on this map, but I know where it is now because I looked at page 3. So Ithaca is approximately in this area here. So I remember Ithaca was about here, and this is telling me that Ithaca is part of, if I said Ithaca was about here, Ithaca seems to be part of what we call the Allegheny Plateau. So let's go back to our question and look for that in the answer choices. I don't see Allegheny Plateau in any of my answer choices. But remember, earlier we said that the Allegheny Plateau was part of a larger landscape region called the Appalachian Plateau. Let's see if I can find that in my answer choices. Here it is, choice A, Appalachian uplands. Let's go ahead and try number 2. Number 2 says the Mohawk River and the Hudson River. So we want to look at the Mohawk and the Hudson. Both flow primarily over a landscape region classified as A: lowlands, mountains, highlands, or plateaus. Well, let's find both of these rivers. So the Mohawk River is hard to find, but again, you have to take your time and try to find it. The Mohawk River is in the middle of the state, right about here. Okay. And it flows into the Hudson River, which flows up and down the state all the way through here. Okay. So that area is where I have my Mohawk River and my Hudson River. Now, we can say that these rivers are on the eastern part of the state. Okay. Let's try to figure out if we can figure out where this area is on the map on page 2. I would say that the Mohawk River was about here, and the Hudson River flowed from about here down through this area. Okay, so if we look, it looks like most of where these two rivers are flowing is through what we call the Hudson Mohawk lowlands. Let's see if that's an answer choice. If I go down, oh yeah, look, choice A is lowlands. That's my answer.